addressing my question. If there is to be a deal, there has to be some compromise. And of course, I'll be quizzing.
In other words, we don't care about Iranian civilians. We only care about if you people have nuclear energy, if you people have nuclear power. We only care about that, because otherwise our dictatorship, global dictatorship, might be in trouble. Otherwise, our hegemony in the world might be in trouble. Otherwise, the military fear that we have upon the world might be in trouble.
Iranians and expect Iran to go back to 2015. We both go to 2015, or no one goes to 2015. I take it.
So you don't offer a fair deal. You keep making the deal stricter and stricter, and trying to put more pressure on the other country. You then put sanctions on them, and then you are saying that there is a trust issue on them.
Whether you think, do you, that you can survive without the dollar economy, without the US lifting its sanctions?
Yes.
I just wonder
We
whether
can.
the faith you can outlast the American pressure on your country, whether it's justified.
In fact, I'm gonna make a prediction. Soon America will lose control over the dollar, right? Russia, China are stronger than America. This video is about the Iran nuclear deal, and this topic is, I think, very important topic, especially in current time in 2024. Before I move on to the reaction video, I would just like to ask a question, that just think for a second, that will this world be more safe if countries like USA and Israel have nuclear weaponry, and their opponents like Iran don't have nuclear energy? Just think that question for a second. Isn't it ironic that how much the Western world always portrays that what big a threat it would be if Iran has nuclear energy, not nuclear weapons, nuclear energy at the moment. But even if they have nuclear weapons, so what? So what? We have to say it like this. So what? USA has nuclear weapons. UK has nuclear weapons. France has nuclear weapons. Israel has nuclear weapons. USA and Israeli governments are more extreme governments. We know that. We know that. Just think for a second. Do we have more threat from USA or Israel or countries like Iran? Definitely from USA and Israel. There has been only one country in the world who has actually dropped nuclear weapons on human beings. There is only one country in history who has dropped nuclear weapons on human beings, and that is the USA. So let's move on to the video.
But in essence, what you're saying is you do not have one shred of faith or trust in what the Americans are bringing to the table. And I think it's also true to point out that you on the Iranian side refuse to talk face-to-face with the Americans anyway. It all has to be done through third parties. So if that's the case, I'm just wondering why you're bothering wasting your time and everybody else.
I mean, look at how cynical this person is, Stephen Sackur. Look at how diabolical these people are. I mean, he's saying that, you don't want to talk to the Americans. The Americans accepted the deal. I mean, who are they trying to fool? The Americans accepted the deal with Iran during the Obama administration, the JCPOA. And in fact, Obama actually said that, and Iran did complete negotiations with the USA. And Obama actually said that so much effort has been put that we cannot just, ignore this deal. We have to accept this deal. They accepted in 2015. And after Trump came in, they moved away from the deal. I mean, what kind of a joke is this? You accept a deal with a country, just because the country's president has changed, you pull away from the deal, and now you are saying that, you don't want to negotiate with them. I mean, who are you? Who is this person trying to fool? Stephen Sackur is a total, what should I say? he's a total fool, right? He cannot, these sort of rhetoric doesn't work anymore.
Is by going through this charade in Vienna without a shred of trust or good faith. It's a waste of time.
You made a deal with Iran and you pulled away, and now you are blaming them on a good faith. Stephen Sackur, what kind of, stupidity is this? This is extreme stupidity.
Well, first of all, the Iranians negotiated extensively with the United States. And then we have the JCPOA, the nuclear deal. And what happened? The Americans violated the deal under Obama.
Under Trump, they tore up the deal. Under Biden, they continue to implement Trump's policies. So if the Americans want to talk to the Iranians, first the Americans have to go and implement what they agreed to do when they negotiated with the Iranians previously. The Iranian leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, said around the time when the nuclear deal was being negotiated that if the Americans implement the nuclear deal in good faith, and the Europeans by extension, then we can think about discussing other issues. But the Americans and the Europeans never did that at all. Under Obama, forget Trump.
But trust cuts both ways, Professor Marandi. There is a trust problem in the United States precisely because they see what Iran has been doing since 2018 in terms of ramping up the uranium enrichment program. And you've gone far beyond even your previous capability of enriching to 20%. You've now got systems in place which allow you substantial enrichment capacity all the way up to 60%. Why on earth are you doing that?
Why shouldn't Iran do that? Iran has every right to do so within the framework of international law.
I'll tell you why. I guess you asked me the question.
I love it. I love his style. I mean, Mohammad Marandi, such a strong style. Yeah, and he's right. I mean, nuclear energy is used for energy as well, right? So why cannot Iran have that right under international law? So
I'll tell you why, because it's quite simple, because you say your nuclear program is completely civilian oriented. It's all about developing your power infrastructure. You simply don't need to enrich uranium to that level to have the power capacity you want.
It's quite clear, and I think you know this as well as I, that Iran has expanded its peaceful nuclear program because the only way to force the Americans and the Europeans to abide by their commitments is for the Iranians to gain leverage. You know this as well as I. The Americans and the Europeans are brutal. The sanctions that they impose on ordinary women and children are crimes against humanity. These are people that have no sense of morality. Just like what we saw in what they do to Venezuela. Your government steals Venezuelan gold, or the destruction of Libya or Yemen. Iran looks around and sees what's going on, the destruction of Syria through a dirty war. The Iranians need to protect themselves. So the Iranians, therefore, they have to use leverage to force the Americans and the Europeans to come back.
You call it leverage. Many people watching and listening to this might call it a threat. What you seem to be saying is we're going to enrich uranium, develop our capacity to 60%, and who knows, maybe beyond it to the 95% you need to develop a nuclear weapon, simply as a threat to hang over the United States and its allies, to tell them that if they don't do what we want in Tehran, we will pursue a nuclear weapon. Is that what you mean by leverage?
Stephen, you know as well as I that if Iran wanted to pursue a nuclear weapon, Iran would have had it many years ago. The only countries that have gone beyond threatening are Western countries.
Yeah, I would actually like to explain this. So the JCPOA is like, you know, if you negotiate with Iran, it was actually better for USA. It is still better for USA because if you have a deal with Iran, it means that you can at least extract some of the information from the higher ranks, right? About, you know, the nuclear energy, about uranium, right? All these kind of things. But if you pull away from the deal, now Iran will say that we can do whatever we like because, you know, the world works like this. If you don't want to make a deal, if you don't want to negotiate with them, then they can do whatever they like, just like USA develops nuclear energy, just like UK develops nuclear energy, just like other countries develop nuclear energy. Why cannot Iran develop nuclear energy? So if you pull away from the deal, not only will you not extract the information, but Iran will say that, okay, now we can do independently what we like. I mean, if USA don't want to make a negotiation with us, then we can do whatever we like under international law.
They've tried to crush Iranian society through sanctions, just like what they're doing in Afghanistan, just like what they're doing in a host of other countries. They're trying to crush women and children through sanctions. So these are not threats. These are actions by Western regimes that.
So whatever the West doesn't like, whatever USA doesn't like, from a certain Muslim countries, what they do, they implement sanctions, especially economic sanctions, right? So they take their anger out on the civilians. I mean, this is the level of their psychopathic behavior, similar to Israel, right? What Israel is doing right now, their enmity was with Hamas, but they take out their anger on civilians. This is exactly what USA did to Iran. Their sanctions targeted their people, the civilians, the public, not the Iranian government.
Try to gain leverage through the suffering of ordinary people. The Iranians are quite willing to go back to the nuclear deal, but the other side has to come back with Iran as well. Iran won't appease the Europeans.
But this is where it gets complicated, because you've been very
That's
candid
great.
with me about what Iran is up to right now and the degree to which you are seeking leverage. And the fact is that between 2018 and now, you have acquired a whole host of new capacity in your uranium enrichment facilities. As I understand it from the latest IAEA report, you now have a stockpile of uranium enriched to 60%. That's at least 17 kilograms, might be significantly more. You now have 400 installed so-called...
Might be significantly more. Who has trust issues, Stephen Sackur? Who has trust issues?
IR6 centrifuges, which are all about this maximum enrichment capacity. So things have changed since 2018. If you are going back to seek a deal with the United States, are you saying to the Americans, we will hand over all of this 60% enriched uranium. We won't keep it. We'll give it up. We'll also give up the capacity, the scientific knowledge, and also the equipment that we've acquired in the last 3 years.
This is what they often do. I mean, this is they often do that. If we do this, will you do it? If we say this, will you do it? I mean, almost, on anything, if, the other side will say, no, we will first negotiate. We know, oh, you pulled out of the deal. You don't trust us. I mean, this is their, level of stupidity. In order to make a certain deal, you have to negotiate things. These are not straightforward things. These are things to be discussed openly. And these are not, so black and white things as well.
Is that what you're saying?
Look, Stephen, you're speaking from a very Eurocentric position. I find it very disturbing when I speak here, and the only thing that cannot go back is for us to go back and have the women and children who died as a result of the sanctions be revived. We can't bring them back to life. And they're much more important than anything that the Europeans and the Americans want from Iran. And it's absolutely disgusting that Western countries would do this to ordinary Iranians.
But Professor Marandi, you make that point with passion and with power, but you're not addressing my question. If there is to be a deal, there has to be some compromise. And of course, I'll be quizzing.
In other words, we don't care about Iranian civilians. We only care about if you people have nuclear energy, if you people have nuclear power. We only care about that, because otherwise our dictatorship, global dictatorship, might be in trouble. Otherwise, our hegemony in the world might be in trouble. Otherwise, the military fear that we have upon the world might be in trouble. Yeah, this is the real thing, right?
US officials about the compromises they're prepared to make, but I'm quizzing you about the compromises Iran is prepared to make. And my question directly to you is, what are you going to do with all of this 60% enriched uranium if you're to do a deal with the international community and in particular the Americans?
I mean, he's like a broken record now, Stephen Sackur. He's looking so stupid, this person, right?
Stephen, that's for the negotiators
to
talk about. But the Iranians are willing to go back to 2015. Is not Iraq. Iran is not even Vietnam. Iran and its allies in this region are far more powerful than anything the Americans have confronted before. The Israeli regime is too puny and small to do anything significant to Iran. And if it attacks Iran, the retaliation will be something disproportionate and crushing. So I don't think the Israelis would be that foolish. But the Americans know quite well that if they attack Iran, all those bases in the region and all those countries that are hosting those bases will pay a heavy price, and it will bring about the destruction of the global economy. So there is a balance of terror here, and the Iranians don't believe that the United States will be foolish enough to engage in war. So the smart thing is for the Americans to negotiate. The smart thing is
diplomacy.
The Iranians have already compromised. The JCPOA was the compromise. And
Iran is a nuclear power now. America cannot mess with Iran. The American government cannot mess with Iran, which is a good thing. I mean, imagine if, there was not a confronting power against the USA. I mean, we would have been seeing not an end to any American wars, right?
We speak, the Iranians are willing to go, more than willing to go back to the compromise, because the Iranians want the sanctions that are targeting women and children to end. But the Europeans and the Americans are behaving just like Trump did. The Biden regime and European regime.
Really like the word behaving. It's their behavior. It's the behavior of the US governments and the UK governments, which is the problem, right? It's their behavior, right? They cannot control themselves. They cannot control their emotions. They are very extremist kind of a people. Biden, right? Yeah, right. And Rishi Sunak.
Regimes are behaving exactly like Trump,
But
even
if
though
I
they
may
pretend
say
to be
so,
otherwise.
the problem with all the rhetoric you're giving me is that you're making it harder and harder for Joe Biden to actually develop a different strategy toward Iran. When you talk of bringing down a reign of violence on US targets across the Middle East, and of course we know your relationship with Hezbollah, with militias in Iraq, and of course with the Houthis in Yemen, you're going to make it impossible for Biden to do a deal with Iran.
Stephen, you are the one who is talking about war and violence, and the Israelis not waiting for anyone. The Iranians are not going to initiate any conflict. The Iranians have been. Your government supported Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
Your government gave Saddam Hussein chemical weapons to use, your governments, Western governments, to use against our country. I survived 2 chemical attacks. Many of my friends didn't. Iran never retaliated with chemical weapons. That's the difference between us and your governments. Our government does not initiate conflict.
So to be clear, all right, to be clear, because again, I just want to try to be specific and as brief as I can be. You're saying that right now, Tehran sees no difference between the Biden administration and its strategy toward your country and that of Donald Trump.
Let's look at the evidence. The Biden administration is using maximum pressure sanctions, the same sanctions that Trump was using. Why is he doing that? To get concessions from Iran. That's exactly what Trump wanted. Trump imposed this array of sanctions under different labels called the maximum pressure campaign in order to force Iran to change the JCPOA.
Yeah.
I think that is exactly what Biden is doing. Otherwise, the deal is very clear for all sides.
But
the Europeans know.
All right, but it's not all about the nuclear deal anyway, is it, when it comes to sanctions? You might wish it to pin it all on that deal, but actually some of the US sanctions, very significant sanctions, are connected to Iran's human rights abuses and other abuses, not actually specifically to the...
Let's talk about American human rights abuses, right? First, let's talk about Israeli human rights abuses. Iran is like not even 1% or 0.5% to them, right? This guy is a pile of, you can fill in the blanks, right? This BBC reporter, Stephen Sackur, is like, he's a stupid person.
Nuclear program. When the world looks at what Iran is doing in terms of its political prisoners, and in particular its treatment of foreign nationals inside your country, it doesn't see a Tehran government which appears to want to improve its human rights record.
Please, let's not talk about human rights. Otherwise, we'll have to talk about Assange and solitary confinement and many other people. Let's not talk about human rights when your government, the Western governments in the United States are imposing maximum pressure on ordinary women and children, killing people. Let's not talk about human rights when Afghanistan, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Libya, Venezuela,
wars after wars, right?
Suffering under Western sanctions. There's nothing that the West can talk about when it comes to human rights.
How many interviews has Stephen Sackur did to US officials about all these American wars, these inhumane wars, all the civilians killed in Iraq? How many has BBC done interviews, with the American officials, with the UK officials? So this line of questioning against just against a side that you don't like, I mean, it's the colonialist mindset, right? That these Western media has.
They are the enemy of human rights when it comes to our region and other parts of the world. What is important though, is that all of these sanctions that were imposed under the Trump regime, whatever the labels, they were explicit, the Trump regime, about using these sanctions under different labels to force Iran to renegotiate the JCPOA. That is appeasement. And the Iranians will not have that. So the intention of all these sanctions was to get concessions from Iran. Iran won't accept that. If the Europeans and the Americans want if they're serious about the deal, they cannot continue to hold the throats of ordinary Iranians and expect Iran to go back to 2015. We both go to 2015, or no one goes to 2015.
I take
So you don't offer a fair deal. You keep making the deal stricter and stricter and trying to put more pressure on the other country. You then put sanctions on them, and then you are saying that there is a trust issue on them. I mean, what kind of negotiation is this? This is not diplomacy. We have to call USA out. USA has lost its head. USA cannot make diplomatic decisions anymore, right? So if USA has lost his head and cannot make diplomatic decisions anymore, then unfortunately this world will turn into a very bad place, because if USA behaves like if the USA government behaves like always taking a military approach to solving the problems, always taking a military approach against countries upon whom you don't like what you want them to do, then other countries, not all countries will bow down to them. And if not all countries will bow down to them, then you can expect what will happen next. USA has to suffer a defeat. USA will have to suffer a defeat.
From that answer then, you're not even interested in discussing the plight of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, the British citizen who is still facing detention in Iran. She's been in detention since 2016 under the notion that she was plotting to topple the Iranian government, a charge which she and her family say is utterly ridiculous. You also, I noticed, put back in detention a French national, Fariba Abdelkak, again under charges which the French government describe as ridiculous. It looks to the outside world as though you're doing this simply because you're not getting what you want from the international community. Is that it?
Well, Western countries are not the international.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. It's not international community. It's just USA, UK. It's these bullies, these gangster. USA, UK, Israel. These countries have a gangster mentality. Call them gangsters, not the international community, Mr. Sackur.
That era has finished.
Yeah.
Western countries are a handful of countries, and their clout is decreasing.
Clout.
You should go and ask your prime minister, who at the time when he was the foreign secretary went to parliament and said that she violated Iranian laws.
I mean, I love how this guy is speaking, right? I mean, we can take a leaf out of Iran, right? Other countries can take a leaf out of Iran. Look at how he's speaking. He hasn't shown any sort of an inferiority complex against the Western.
So he said that.
No, he didn't actually
Yes,
say
he did.
that. No, he didn't say she had violated any Iranian law.
Basically, what he said,
he didn't say that.
Violating.
But I do find what you've just said interesting in the sense you're saying, you know what?
Illegally.
Yeah, well, let's not misquote anybody. But let us also stick to the point you just made about Iran not really caring very much about the Western powers anymore. Is that because you've made a strategic decision to put all of your faith in, for example, a 25-year-long economic agreement you've just signed with China? You're looking eastward and you think, do you, that you can survive without the dollar economy, without the US lifting its sanctions?
Yes.
I just wonder
We
whether
can.
the faith you have, you can outlast the American pressure on your country, whether it's justified.
In fact, I'm gonna make a prediction. Soon America will lose control over the dollar, right? Russia, China are stronger than America. BRICS is coming, right? BRICS is coming. So America will lose control over dollar. American dollar doesn't matter anymore. I don't like American dollars as well, right?
Well, I think what is not justified is the Americans trying to strangle ordinary people. That's what's not justified. That's sickening and ugly. And the Iranians will look everywhere for cooperation. The Americans, if the Europeans and the Americans don't want to abide by their commitments in the JCPOA, should the Iranians just sit there? The Iranians will improve their relationship with the global South. They'll improve their relationship with neighboring countries, and they'll improve their relationship with those countries that don't want ordinary Iranians to suffer. So if
like Russia, China, maybe, right?
you don't want Iran to have greater relations with the Chinese, if you don't want Iran to improve their relations with the Russians, then start behaving normally. Start behaving like normal countries instead of being exceptional and calling your countries the international community and expecting Iran to abide by its commitments, whereas your countries do not have to abide by theirs. The greatest human rights violation, Stephen, is making ordinary people suffer, and that is what Western governments do.
Great interview, right? The West has been isolated, and Iran, Russia, China will take over if USA continues like this, and ultimately USA will lose their control over the world. And with that, Assalamu alaikum.